Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of Blue Leadership with your host, Dennis Nair. Dennis is a 26-year law enforcement veteran and retired chief from the state of New York. He's also a proud graduate of the 240th session of the FBI National Academy and the 61st session of the FBI LEDA Command Institute. The Blue Leadership video podcast is brought to you by the nationally ranked Master of Science in Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership program at the University of San Diego. You can learn more about the LEPSL program at criminaljustice.sandiego.edu. And with that, I'll kick things over to your host to introduce our featured guest.
Sarah, thank you. Great to be here. Great to be starting episode 26, now on our path to 50. And I'm very happy today for today's guest. Today's guest is Assistant Sheriff Melissa Klawuhn of the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Office in California. And a little bit about Assistant Sheriff here. There's just a lot of things, and normally I could keep them all right in mind, but I want to make sure I don't forget any. So her agency, it's an 1,100-person sworn agency. They cover 715 square miles. They serve a population of 1 million people. And in her time, she's been there now in her 22nd year. She's been a lab aide. She's worked for the Forensic Services Division, a criminalist, which is different than a criminologist in that she's actually the person doing forensics examinations. She's been a deputy sheriff, worked in detention, patrol, investigations, hostage negotiator, SWAT commander, which we'll talk about a little bit during the interview, lieutenant, captain, and now her current role as assistant sheriff. She's in charge right now of training, professional standards. She works with personnel and finance. Any one of them by themselves would be pretty huge. Education-wise, she has a bachelor's degree in animal science and a master of science in none other than the LEPSL Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership program, which we're all super proud of. And of course, a California Post Command College graduate. Without further ado, Assistant Sheriff Klawuhn, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dennis, for giving me this opportunity to be part of the podcast. And thank you for the introduction.
Absolutely. And I'm going to jump right in. And I just want to talk a little bit about your career. Can you tell us a little bit about, there's a ton of things you've done in your years of service. It's mind-boggling. And before that, you had a little bit of a different career trajectory. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I graduated with a bachelor's in animal science, like you said, but I wasn't sure what to do with that degree. So I ended up getting a teaching credential, and I started off teaching high school science, mostly chemistry and a little bit of biology, but I only lasted about 3 years. It was definitely a tough career, and although I liked teaching, I found the school system to be a bit frustrating. And so I decided to look at other opportunities that I could use my degree towards. And so at the time, the Contra Costa County Office of the Sheriff was hiring laboratory aides, which is a non-sworn professional position. So I ended up applying for that position and got hired to work in the crime lab. And then, as you said, the common progression is to promote to a criminalist. And at that time, our criminalists were sworn staff members. So I ended up going through the police academy as a sworn criminalist. So I kind of transitioned from education into law enforcement unexpectedly.
Wow. And that was actually my next question, the transition. Do you think that background you had prior to law enforcement, did it help you? Was it in any way, did you think it served a value?
So yes, on two fronts. So the teaching experience, I think, has helped me because I have continued to teach throughout my career. And like, for example, right now I oversee our training division, which includes our basic academy and in-service training. And so I've really enjoyed teaching, and I've tried to keep up with teaching throughout my career in law enforcement. And then my science background obviously came into play when I was working at the crime lab. And then when I transitioned to be a deputy sheriff, and I made my way through several assignments and ultimately went to investigations, my background at the crime lab working in forensics helped me with a position that I had with our cold case homicides. And so that's very DNA heavy, and I had a bit of a science background that helped me out in that regard as well.
So when you were studying chemistry did you ever think you'd be applying it in the ways of a criminalist?
No, not at all. Animal science is kind of either a trajectory towards veterinary medicine or people that work in ranching, that work with large animals. And I had no family or friends in law enforcement at that time. So it was definitely not expected for me to go in that direction.
Wow. Some of the best happenstances are exactly like that. And with that, so now in your current role as assistant sheriff, and we kind of set the stage for it's an 1,100 person sworn agency, 715 square miles, which is huge. I think you had 600,000 calls for service last year, or 600,000 calls to dispatch, 60,000 were 911. I mean, that's a busy agency, and you're at that top echelon. Can you just tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about what your key roles and responsibilities are right now?
Yeah, sure. So we have 1,100 employees and over 700 sworn. So we are well, I guess it depends on how you classify, but we classify ourselves as a mid to larger law enforcement agency. So I'm one of 4 assistant sheriffs, and each assistant sheriff oversees a bureau. My bureau is our Administrative Services Bureau, which is actually the smallest bureau of our department. Our custody bureau is our largest in terms of staffing, and then we have a field operations bureau, and we have a support services bureau. So my bureau, the Administrative Services Bureau, includes, as you mentioned before, our training division, our professional standards, which is all of our hiring, our recruiting, our PRA response unit, and then also our fiscal and personnel. So part of my job is to hire and review the backgrounds of all of our staff that we hire here, both sworn and professional, conduct interviews with our deputy sheriff, recruits and laterals, and also run our basic academy, in-service training. And then the thing that was probably the newest for me to learn was the fiscal side and learning how to prepare our budget each year and manage all of our personnel issues as well.
Yeah, that's a lot. And like I was saying at the beginning, any one of those would be seemingly a full-time operation.
Yeah, luckily I have fantastic managers, sworn and professional captains and directors, and we have a professional chief who runs all of our fiscal and personnel. So they are the experts in each one of their divisions, and I've got fantastic people that I work with that makes it possible to be able to oversee a variety of operations.
Well, I have 2 questions as kind of an ancillary to that. What is and I think you mentioned a little bit about the financial end, which had a steep learning curve. What would you say is the most challenging part of your job?
Definitely hiring and recruiting. I think all agencies are going through that right now. I've been in my position for a little over 2 years. My directive when I was first appointed as an assistant sheriff was to hire as many deputy sheriffs as we could. We were, I think, down about 10%, maybe a little bit more than 10% of our staff. So very similar to what other agencies are experiencing. And we've put a lot of resources, both with personnel and financial, towards hiring and recruiting, and not only getting people in the door, but making sure we hire the right people is really important. So reviewing all their backgrounds, making the decisions on whether somebody is qualified to be a deputy sheriff or professional staff. And then also watching them go through the basic police academy. We've had some dropout rates in the past that we've addressed, once we get people in there, we want to keep them in the program and make them successful. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and like you said, nationwide, it's a problem. And sadly, some agencies are just filling positions. And I completely agree with you. You could never take a shortcut. Either you have the right candidate who's suitable, or you don't. And if you don't, then there's no second thoughts about trying to move forward, because this is such a challenging job. And the people who wear that uniform or work in a support role, they'll make or break an agency. So I could definitely see that as challenging to try to meet the need of women and men for the agency, and also make sure you have the right ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
How's it going with now including diversity in the mix?
So we've done pretty well with hiring diverse staff. We have a very diverse community, so we are trying very hard to represent our community in our staffing as well. And that's not only a goal for us as a department, but for the county as a whole. So we've made some changes to the testing process that we do for deputy sheriffs, including different written tests and physical fitness tests. And we've seen with a few small changes that we've been able to get a more diverse applicant pool. We're still working hard to recruit females. That continues to be a challenge. We run, I think the last time I checked our stats, we have about 15.5% females in our sworn classifications, which is above the national average, but certainly below what we're hoping for. So we've pushed a lot towards recruiting females. And in fact, last week we did our second Junior Women's Academy that we've hosted at our range, where we bring in a bunch of high school girls from throughout the county, and we are exposing them to law enforcement, all the different things that we do. We're teaching them skills and showing them all the instructors and presenters are all women from different classifications in our department. And we're trying to give them a positive experience with law enforcement, and then hopefully encourage some of them to seek that career pathway, whether it's to be a deputy or a dispatcher or another professional position.
That's awesome, because one of the things I was going to touch on was the 30 by 30 initiative. And for our listeners and viewers who don't know, the goal is by 2030 to have 30% of the sworn workforce in law enforcement across the country be women. And right now, I think that level is at 12%, and you said you're 15, so you're slightly higher, but still a ways to go. And in leadership positions such as yourself, it's 3%. So there's definitely work to go. And one of the things, and maybe you could touch on a little more, some of the studies have shown women in law enforcement, there's a higher level, sometimes connection of compassion and reductions in use of force. And it just, again, creates that diversity that's more reflective of the communities. And is there any more that you can add that can expand on that?
Well, we do, even though our numbers aren't as high as what I know we would like and our sheriff would like, we do have a lot of women that are in all the different assignments, specialty assignments and ranks. And it was very telling when we first put this camp together that we had women on a SWAT team. We have women that are canine officers, that are dispatchers, that are crime lab people, that are FTOs. So we're able to showcase a lot of the women that work really hard throughout the department, and they promote, they are able to get these specialty assignments based on the hard work that they're doing, and it's really based on merit. So we're not satisfied with our current numbers, but we're also pretty proud of the women that we have and what they're accomplishing, and we're still trying to mentor them to continue to promote and seek these specialty assignments and things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And people like yourself are shattering that glass ceiling that's there and showing what can be done. And one of the things I mentioned was your role as a SWAT commander. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's not a position that's traditionally held by women, and you obviously held it and did really well. And can you expand on that for us, please?
Yeah, so our SWAT team, it's an ancillary duty. It's we have about 50 team members, and that includes our tactical operators, hostage negotiators, and we have tactical dispatchers. So I started off on the team as a hostage negotiator as a deputy, and I stayed on the team when I promoted to sergeant and became a team leader. And with each promotion, your opportunity to stay on the team diminishes because we have a lot more deputies than we do sergeants, and then we have only 2 lieutenants that command the team. And so when I promoted to lieutenant, I was asked to return to the team as a commander, and I was very honored to be requested to do that. And it was a great experience for me to not only be able to manage the negotiation side where I had most of my experience, but the tactical side as well. And so I started as the assistant commander, and then I ended up through attrition and changes of positions, I ended up as the team commander. And it's, at that level, you're managing all of your resources. It's a very skilled team where the team members and the team leaders, they know exactly what to do and when to do it, as long as you are clear with the mission and what the objectives are of that mission. So it was a great experience for me to be able to do that, and I was very fortunate to have that experience.
That's great, and spoken and stated like a true leader, because obviously the mission is really important, and vision and clear operational goals, but clearly the leadership of the person in that role is key. So I think that's an awesome part of your professional background, and probably lends itself good to what you're doing right now.
Yeah, it all of that helps. I definitely think the more experience that you have with, managing or planning events or bigger types of projects help you manage. And with our department, we have a lot of assignments, we have a lot of movement. So you have an opportunity to really learn all the different operations of the department. And if you can bring those experiences with you, it just makes you stronger in the next role that you have.
Agreed. I want to ask you, this will probably tie into some of what we just talked about. What are you most passionate about? There's obviously so many things you've done, and there's so many things that you're involved with currently. What are you most passionate about in the profession?
I think it goes back to teaching and mentoring. I've had an amazing career, and I've been able to do all different types of assignments. It's from probably some of my favorite assignments have been investigations and being part of the SWAT team in different capacities. I have really enjoyed teaching from the time I started in the crime lab to teaching in our academy, and I've taught some management level courses as well for post, and I really love the mentoring and the development. And although I'm not out in the field much anymore, I'm more behind the desk. My goal is to try to give the opportunity to our folks that are up and coming to have as good of a career as I have had, because it's been amazing. I can't believe that 20 years have passed, because it's just been a variety of experiences. It's never boring. It's never mundane. And so I think what I'm passionate about is just being able to provide that to those that are just starting in this field, and hopefully they will, be in the same place I am or have the same feelings I do 20 years later.
Yeah, that's I think an amazing legacy to leave, mentoring and teaching and paving the way for others. And I've always said that once you get to a leadership position, your job should be working doubly hard just to make it that those who are answering those calls for service or doing the true essence of police work have the ability to do it by what you do in a leadership role to pave that path.
Absolutely, I agree.
What do you think? I want to talk about challenges, but I think I want to switch the order of the questions. What I want to ask you is you have the Master of Science in the Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership Program, LEPSL. And that's an amazing program. My running comment is that when I went through it, I always felt I had a camera following me because it was just such a high relevance to everything I was doing in the practical world and such a direct relevance. I wanted to ask you, how has that degree, your MS LEPSL, helped you in your current role and getting to that role or advancing or just in general?
It was an amazing program. And I think for me, it had been so many years since I had gone to school. We go to training and we generally are not required to do a lot of projects outside of class. The post-command college was the first one where, we actually had papers to write between courses and things like that. But back at the time I got my bachelor's degree, there was no online, there were no online courses. You attended it in person. I also attended, very different types of classes than what the Master's LEPSL program offered. A lot of them were science-based, laboratory-based, or out in the barns with the animals. So for me, it was a great learning experience to use the online format, something that was completely new to me. I feel that my writing skills were really accelerated from the program just because the amount of papers that we were writing and research that was being done really made me a lot more comfortable with writing, which is something that I do a lot with my job now. And collaborating on professional projects with people that I didn't know or I wasn't even working in person with, that was a great skill because we're still, even though we're, I hope, past the major portions of the pandemic, we're still using a lot of virtual formats in our work and, working with other county departments and things like that. So being able to collaborate professionally with people that I am not physically close with has been great. And more than anything, and I know a lot of people say this about the program, but networking and making connections with people that are in California, in other states. I've been able to reach out to people since the program and get, their insight and maybe an issue that I'm trying to work out, or get their opinion or collaborate with them on some ideas. So networking is, I think, the biggest benefit that I took away from the program.
Wow. So as a repeat back, so we have collaboration and connections. We have the networking again, which is huge. And then I really want to key in that first thing you said, the writing. I'm a big proponent when I'm running a class, it's just the writing, because really what a person writes really represents who they are and their level of intellect as seen by others. And if they're writing because they need something from a grant or they want to, a proposal to go through their local government or whatever, if they can't express it correctly in writing and draw in empirical data to support it, then they may not get what they need to have. And that's why I really think, like you said, that writing and being able to hone it through a program like this is such a key element.
Absolutely. And just feeling more confident in it, in your writing abilities, makes it a lot less daunting of a task. Often we get an assignment or we're told to do something that we know is going to be, we call them white papers here, where we write proposals for, a new system or some equipment or personnel or something like that. And that task can seem very overwhelming when it's given to you initially. But if you're more confident in writing, you realize that it's not surmountable. You're going to be able to put your thoughts down on paper efficiently and hopefully effectively. And that has helped me tremendously since I went through the program.
And I'll even add one more, and persuasively, so you
Yes.
can get whatever that is your proposal is asking. Thank you. You just support something that we at faculty are always really trying to get that point across to the value, and you just said that. What I'd like to ask, Assistant Sheriff, is challenges. You talk recruiting and retention. That's huge across the country, large and small agencies and everything in between. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see right now, whether specific to your agency or for the profession as a whole?
So something that I'm currently dealing with, and it's part of overseeing our Public Records Act response unit, but I think this applies to every agency right now in law enforcement, is how we respond to not only the public's request for transparency, but also the legislative demands that we are facing to be transparent with data. Specifically, we're being requested right now for a lot of data, and there is no financial support that comes with that legislation in order to provide that data. And I know for my agency right now, we're doing our best to gather this information from a bunch of different databases and different systems, but a lot of us don't have that specific skill to not only collect data, but to analyze it and present it in a way that the public can understand. And so we're starting to look at support staff that have that specific skill, because there are a lot of folks out there that can do that, but they generally are not employed in law enforcement, at least in my experience. And so trying to supplement or support the agency with staff that can do that data analysis, I think is really important right now. So my department, for example, we're trying to put together a business intelligence unit, which is a concept I had never heard about, but having folks that are specifically skilled with the technology and the analysis side of things to take all of the things that we're doing and put it into a usable format, so somebody outside of law enforcement can look at the data and they can interpret it correctly, hopefully, so that they really see what we're doing and they get the transparency that they want to know what their local law enforcement agencies are doing, and we're presenting it in a good way. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, but it's just learning that we need to employ people with that specific skill, because I know my spreadsheet abilities and analysis abilities are somewhat limited, but there are people out there that can do that.
Yeah, and it takes time. It's time
Yes.
consuming, and obviously you're doing many other things, so that really does require a very specific person that's dedicated to just that.
Yeah, and I think there's a desire to be transparent. I believe that we all want to be transparent with what we're doing, but we want to make sure that what we're reporting is accurate. And like you said, it is very time consuming when we're pulling data by hand or from various sources that may not be as modern as they could be to create those reports automatically for us. So it's not a lack of wanting to be transparent. It's really just having the ability to do it in a accurate manner.
Yeah, I agree, because you could have a great report, but if it's shown that the accuracy is off, then it actually puts the agency in a worse position because it brings doubt to what they're doing.
Absolutely. So from my standpoint, that's one of our biggest challenges that we're currently going through here. And like you said, also the recruiting and hiring of the right people and retaining them, that continues to be a challenge for us. It's been a challenge for us for most of my career, with some ups and downs, over the years. And I know that in talking to other students in the LEPSL program, that was a big struggle for a lot of people, and it continues to be. But I think that will also always be there. We want to make sure that we have the right people that are out in the field or working in our facilities that are making the right decisions as well.
Yeah, definitely. Not a lot of downtime in your role, and I agree. Those are solid challenges to meet. But I want to, as we're wrapping things up, this is a leadership-based podcast, which stemmed from a nationally recognized leadership-based master's program. So I always like to ask the guests, leadership podcasts, leadership books. Are there any that resonate with you and that you'd recommend for the listeners and viewers?
So I was trying to think of books that I have read that weren't part of the LEPSL program. And one that came to mind, and maybe it is part of the program with some instructors, but one that I really liked a lot was the Extreme Ownership book by Jocko Willink. I've read it a couple of times. It kind of hits on one of my pet peeves with some of our managers about taking ownership of their command. And it's not an easy concept. It's not easy to take on all of the responsibilities, whether you are actually present for those, maybe bad choices or not. But I do think that is a very important concept. And I really enjoyed that book. I liked it a lot. And if students haven't read that, I definitely recommend, or I do listen to a lot of audiobooks because I have a decent commute each day. As far as podcasts, I don't actually listen to a lot of podcasts, except lately I have been trying to relearn a foreign language that I learned in high school. So I've been trying to spend my time commuting, learning another language and trying to balance myself out a little bit too. So I've always felt that it is important to balance out, not watch TV shows that are related to work, but try to kind of balance out my interests.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, Jocko Willink. I'm a big fan. I have his book on my bookshelf. He also has a podcast series, and I think what you just said about ownership is key. There's a saying that success has many parents, but failure is an orphan, and it's basically that sometimes in leadership you have to own your failures too, and that grows the team, and it's moving forward through that. And I think that's an awesome example for the listeners and viewers that you provided of Jocko, Extreme Ownership. And then also, one of the things we're teaching in the program is, at least in the, like organizational theory, is about double loop learning and learning to learn. And I just think that's awesome that you're using whatever time you have, in addition to your demanding professional life, of learning another language. And that's, I think that also connects with that constant learning.
Yeah, it's not easy. I love traveling, and anytime I travel out of the United States, you encounter individuals from other countries. They always know multiple languages, and it's something that I wish that I had put more of an effort when I was younger, but I figure it's not too late. And if I can learn at least one other language, maybe then I can continue and learn more. But it's a challenge for sure, but it keeps me going during my commutes, and I'm enjoying something new.
Awesome. Assistant Sheriff Klawuhn, so much was covered today. I appreciate your time. Sarah's going to come in and close us out. It's been an honor to be able to hear from you, hear about your experiences, what your path was, and then how it evolved into law enforcement, and not only evolved into it, but to the top echelon of law enforcement. And with that, are any final thoughts, closing thoughts for the listening audience?
I just want to, again, say thank you for the opportunity. It's very humbling to think that, I was asked to share what I did about myself. kind of stumbled my way into this career field. It wasn't something that I grew up knowing that I wanted to do, but I've absolutely loved it. It's a bit strange to think you're towards the tail end rather than the beginning, but I enjoy talking to other people in law enforcement and learning from them. And these podcasts have been a learning opportunity for me along the way. So thank you again for inviting me to be part of one.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm sure I'll close with whatever your next chapter is, whenever you choose to do that, I'm sure everything you've done to this point will just be a very smooth segue into that whenever that day comes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you both so much for your time today. And to our viewers, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to meet the law enforcement heroes and leaders who are a part of the MS Lepsel family. If you'd like to watch previous episodes of Blue Leadership, you can find them on the video tab on our Facebook page or by searching USD Blue Leadership on YouTube. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.